So today I want to talk to you about risk and when it's just not worth it, because so many people take unnecessary risks. Sometimes you get freak accidents, but a lot of the time risk can be reduced. So if this resonates with you, this is all facets of life, by the way. Keep on watching, keep on listening. Hope you find it useful. Welcome back to consecutive day 1709 of the Diary of a Runpreneur. Today's topic is all about risk, and don't take unnecessary risks unless you're prepared to deal with the downsides or the consequences. Before we go into that, please don't forget, it's part of a fundraiser of saving the lives of children by attempting the ultimate ultra marathon of run vlogging on consecutive days, a distance of a lap of the world, barefoot style. And your support gets us in front of more people, raises more money, and saves more children's lives, which is what this is about. So, back to the topic at hand, risk. So the reason for today's topic is a bit of an extreme example, and it might not be the best example, to be fair, but I'm going to use it anyway. So I've just spoke to a friend who's away skiing at the moment, or snowboarding, and they're skiing with like a business networking trip. I was on this same trip last year. Decided against going this year. Didn't really kind of want to go in that type of environment. It's very alpha and kind of, all people kind of selling how great they are, and a lot of them are great, I have to confess. But and sometimes I just prefer being a little bit more backseated and spending my time with people who kind of resonate with that. But anyway, it's a really good event in the grand scheme of things. It's just the personalities there aren't always the type of personalities that are compatible with mine. Nothing against, it's not a bad thing. But this individual's gone anyway, and I did recommend it, to be fair, because I thought this individual would gain a lot from it. And I'm not saying this has happened, which is why I'm not going to mention names, but day one on the slopes, this individual has possibly been pushed harder than they perhaps would have liked, and has been down a red slope. Whether they were ready for that or not, I'm not entirely sure. And the resulting instances was a pretty bad fall, broken shoulder, broken collarbone, I must add, and now we'll be spending no more time skiing, and we'll be, just kind of watching on from the sidelines. And I think my point here is that I think this individual, from previous discussions, although this was talking about skiing as opposed to boarding, he may have been a much more competent boarder than skier. But I've seen images and video footage of this individual on skis, which clearly evidences that they're not the most proficient on the slopes. And I looked at it and thought, that's you want to be on a blue slope at best, based on what I saw. And but maybe this individual had done a lot of lessons for boarding, etc., and maybe they were proficient enough to go on reds, and maybe it's just a freak accident, but maybe the skeptic in me suggests otherwise. And I think what possibly could have happened is this individual could have been pulled along by all of these extroverted alpha entrepreneurs, all trying to be competitive and prove a point, and this individual's been pulled along and ultimately has paid the consequences of being pushed too far too soon, which is a risk that should have been declined. I don't know, this is all speculation, I might add, which is why I'm not mentioning aims, and I can kind of talk this down. But I suppose the learnings from my diary to today is that there are situations in life where you can be on the end of something that's completely outside of your control, that you couldn't de-risk it. But in many situations in life, there is always an element of risk, and it's about assessing or risk assessing the scenario, analysing what the worst case scenario is, and asking yourself whether the upside is sufficient enough to kind of make you want to risk the downside. And I spend a lot of my life de-risking things and looking at things and establishing whether it's worth it or not. And I think the older you get, the less risky you become. That's a general consensus. It's not always, and there are always kind of kind of people that disrupt that statement. But overall, I think it's pretty accurate. And not being influenced by people who are more likely to take that risk, and potentially that risk to them is lower than it is to you. You have to assess it on an individual basis. And when it comes to kind of personal safety and stuff like that, you need to be very, very, very careful. And I think in this instance that I've just described in this episode, possibly could it have been avoided? Maybe it couldn't. I don't officially know because I'm not there. But my interpretation or assessment or assumption, and I know you know what they say about assumptions, you don't want to hang your hat on an assumption, but I think it's a good lesson, even if it's inaccurate in terms of what happened. I think the lesson remains true about risk. And risk can often be very personal, and it's often a personal decision. But you tread even carefuller, or more carefully, sort of not even a word, more carefully when your decision affects many others. That's when you need to be exceedingly careful. This was an isolated incident, and I think ultimately it would have only affected the individual in question. But when you're looking at risk, assess all the parameters. I'm not saying don't ever take a risk, because everything's a risk in life. Crossing the road is a risk in life. But statistically, we know that the likelihood of being hit and injured crossing the road is incredibly low if you're careful and you do the right precautions. But there are other certain instances where the risk is much higher. And let's use this example again. I'm not particularly strong on skis or a snowboard. I'm with a group of people who are stronger skiers or snowboarders than me, and they want to go down a run that I'm not convinced I'm particularly good enough to ski down, but because they've suggested I'm going to go with it. So the risk to the people going down it that aren't you is very low. They know they can get down these slopes, they know they're competent enough to do so. The risk to you, listening to people who already want to go down that slope and they're trying to convince you because they want to go down it, is it's risky for that individual in terms of you're being influenced by people who've got an ulterior motive. I'm not saying their ulterior motive was so that you get injured, but you have to look at all the parameters associated with it and be brave enough and firm enough to say, you know what, I'll meet you down the bottom, I'm going to go down this easier run. But anyway, that's it from me. I hope I've helped, and if I make one person make a slightly better decision off the back of this episode, then it's been a worthwhile one. So that's it from me. Questions or comments, drop me a line, I'll respond to everyone. Do remember though, if you believe in my mission of saving the lives of children by attempting the ultimate ultra marathon of run blogging on consecutive days, distance for lap of the world, barefoot style, do give us a subscribe, share, like and comment. More people we get in front of, more money we raise, more children's lives we save, which is why I do this every single day. Thank you as always. Stay positive, stay happy, and I'll see you again tomorrow.